Rose and Sword by Terry Bale. That's me. This is page 35, and it is springtime here. Let's see if I can show you. Springtime, and I found a quiet place, and it's that way all around me, mostly, and it'll be turning green. And there were some little birdies I saw in the woods a few minutes ago. But there we go, and I better get on with this journey of thought. My daughter and I had a conversation somewhere along about, was it 2002, 2003? Because I wrote this, I typed it up in 2003, wrote it right sitting at the computer. There's a mark on my screen there. I almost got it off. There it got. You couldn't see it. I reached over and took the dust off the screen. Okie dokie. I'll start right in. So, history is something that stands outside of the list. Likewise, also, life and love are not merely items on any list, but they go on to grow and to become more and better on into eternity, while death and hate go on to diminish and to destroy, black hole style, even those that serve themselves by them, down into, I suppose the best term, both literally and figuratively, is hell. In thinking about how life and love go on to become more and better, that makes me think, there's a big concept around about everything being cyclical. But it seems that it's missing something somehow. I think that something is growth and multiplication. Here on Earth, it's easy to see how molecules are found in each and every substance. And when each substance dies or breaks down, its molecules are scattered and become available for use in building other things. Animals eat other animals. Plants are nourished by elements from other plants as those other plants die and disintegrate. Sediment is swept up into the air by wind and is washed out of the air by rain and redeposited on the land in different places. Stuff goes on to make other stuff. But in the principle of life, there is the principle of growth, where something starts out from almost nothing and becomes really something. That is, becomes far more than the sum of its parts. That's like what I mentioned earlier, how man can think and plan and create. That's more than can be accounted for by just the physical elements that make up his body. You can try to account for it through millions and millions of years of evolution, but that could never explain how come life, with thought and growth and emotion, is so dissimilar to the physical elements and compounds that are found both in our bodies and in the innate objects around us. But they want us to believe that life just happened, like out of nowhere. But math teaches us that any number, be it millions or billions or trillions, etc., times zero is still zero. While biology and horticulture and zoology, etc., teach us that if you put life together with a little appropriate material, you'll soon see growth and multiplication. First, there is a multiplication of the size and strength of the original organism. But then, if there is another similar, very similar and complementary organism around, appropriately close enough, those two living things may go on to produce one or more other living things that are very like, yet distinctly different from the parents, and living in themselves. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." That's found in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus also said, "I and my Father are one." That's John 10:30. And John, speaking of Jesus, said, "All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him, in Jesus, was life, and the life was the light of men." That's John 1, verses 3 through 4, 3 and 4. I don't expect to ever understand everything, but that life, with a small l, came from God's greater life, with a capital L, makes sense to me. And I can feel inside that there is something in me that is not attributable to carbon and other physical elements alone. But at this point, someone may point out that for God to have originally come from nothing is just as impossible. Yet somehow, it's not like he came from nothing, but that he always existed. You see, it's like he has life, capital L, and he gave some of it to us so we live. But it's not just that he has life, like we have life with a small l, but rather that he is life, like Jesus spoke of in John 14:6, quoted above. I am the way, the truth, and the life. That life should be a kind of solid substance, and a vast one at that, seems to make sense. And that we don't quite understand it makes sense too. It makes sense not to fully understand something that is completely non-physical and invisible. But to say that our life, which is something obviously quite other than physical, came from something merely physical, that doesn't make sense. Yet that's what many scientists are trying to get us to believe. But as I was saying earlier, that all things go around in circles, old things making up new things, which go on to disintegrate and make up new things, which go on to disintegrate and make up new things, which go on and on and on. That makes sense on the sword side of things, in the physical realm. Funny term, realm. Kind of regal, yet kind of funny. But that invisible, non-physical life should follow that pattern seems to contradict the pattern of life itself. For life, as we have seen, grows and blossoms and multiplies, and the offspring go on to grow and blossom and multiply, and life goes on to multiply life, though indeed it does recycle physical materials. And with each new life, there is a new individual to play their role in history and to affect the lives around them in some way on into eternity. Because the life goes somewhere after physical death. And though some would say that it recycles, just like physical things, there are reasons to believe that instead it goes on, especially as the life inside us does not diminish as we pass our prime, nor even as we grow old and begin to wither, but rather the life inside us often grows stronger and deeper as the physical body becomes weakened or damaged. If the one was connected to or dependent on the other, it would likely be evident as the non-physical aspect declined along with the physical aspect, but it does not. And yet there is Alzheimer's. Yet again, this physical mental decline may often be a side effect of living one's life more on the sword side of things, for such a life tends to be superficial, though it still might be very complicated and difficult and even very impressive, for the sword side of life is shallow in comparison to the depth of the rose side of life, in that sword-inclined persons do spend more of their time and strength using their brain for storage and calculations, rather than using their mind for searching out and pondering and interacting with life's fullness. Life is both awesome and painful. It's a kind of boot camp, but it strengthens us. Yet our high-tech society has mass-produced an armchair version of life that keeps us from confronting much of life firsthand. Such lack of depth may damage the brain. If such is the case, then Alzheimer's disease may not be a contradiction after all. So, in a way, I think that the notion of cycles is reasonable, especially as we see seasons and years go by. But notice there that even they are individual and special. The seasons repeat in type, but not in actual character or significance. I suppose that's because the compound interwoven life going on in history at any given time is as unique as those individuals' lives who compose it and who are kind of composing it, composing like a musical piece. So, if we believe that there is an invisible realm, there goes that word again, realm. Yet Jesus also spoke of such things when he said, "Ye are of this world, I am not of this world." John 8:23. And, quote, "My kingdom is not of this world," end quote. That's John 18, verse 36. His kingdom is not of this world. So then, if we believe that there is an invisible realm, and that it is distinct from the visible realm, though closely connected to it, and if we believe that life is more part of what we cannot see than part of what we can see and handle and measure, even as doctors tell you that there is a qualitative difference between a thing when it's alive and the same thing just after it dies, but that there is no quantitative difference of physical substance at the time of death, then it makes sense to view life as differing from mere substantial existence. And I heard that when they have a really fine scale, that there's a smidgen less weight after the person or the thing dies. But for the most part, all the materials, physical materials, are still there. There's no difference. Life compared to death when it comes to molecules, when it comes to substance. But there is a difference. Life compared to life is gone then. Okay, where did I put it? Then it makes sense to view life as differing from mere substantial existence. And if there is then an invisible realm, and life functions there in all its fullness and beauty, and we share in that life, even while our bodies are still here on the earth, then it makes sense to want to understand more about this invisible place, its dynamics, its creator, and its governor, if it has one. If life himself, that's Jesus, if life himself is the creator and giver of life as we know it, and there is a document that testifies as of him and from him that he is the creator and giver of life, that's the Bible. And if our ability to reason solidly from history to mathematics to science and onward is attributable to life himself having that ability and endowing us with that ability, and going on to encourage that ability by talking with men and helping them write a book, the Bible, write a book that explains to other men the history and basic concepts of how life and history came to be, while in the meantime assuring us that there really is a place, a realm, of which he is the creator and governor, and that he has sent his Son to call us to follow the way of life, which is ever growing and giving, unlike death, which is ever destroying and consuming. Then we have reason to hope in the rest of what that book has to tell us. But even all this stuff about a creator creating us and being our good shepherd and husbandman, that means planter and gardener, husbandman, and wanting us to be loved and wanting to be loved by us. Our Creator wants to be loved by us and wanting to help us along in life, and even His putting Himself out for us, to listen to our petitions and to be touched by our cries. It makes sense. Mainly, it makes sense because we are creators ourselves, and we know what it's like, somewhat, to be creators and shepherds and husbandmen, etc. Our hearts go out to our creations and our charges. We want to defend the underdog and help the defenseless and needy. We can understand that He would reach out to help us because He made us with that reasonable desire and capacity ourselves. We do well to remember also at this point that the Bible speaks of a great deceiver, the devil, who masquerades as an angel of light, who urges us to choose damaging and deadly things while pretending to be on our side. A being whose nature is that of falsehood and deception, of whom Peter warns us, quote, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil," that's the enemy, adversary, the devil, "as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world." That is found in the book of 1 Peter, chapter 5, verses 8 and 9. So not all invisible things are good for us. There is a negative side, much of which, as we have already seen, is made up of truth that's been cut to pieces and carefully but wrongfully reassembled, and that we must vigilantly avoid. Which reminds me that much of religion itself would fit on the sword side, being man-made, not God-made. Whereas James wrote, quote, "Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world." End quote. That is pure religion. That's found in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 27. As we can see, the Lord has left evil things exist here on earth to give us a choice, but that will not last forever. And those who truly live already take part in that eternal realm, and they shall never die. Yet those who work against life are already dying, as they have interwoven their strength and substance with things that corrupt and are corrupted, and things that will not last forever. So, you might say that there is a parallel universe after all, only that parallel universe is not separate, but is superimposed on our universe, or our universe is superimposed upon it, or they intersect somehow, sharing space and time to some degree or other. But the point is that our universe makes sense in a larger fashion, and with respect to larger and deeper things than just being a free-floating mass of lively things and a law unto itself. But what about the other planets and places in the great out there? We know that the planets have mass and obey the laws of gravity and other physical laws. I wonder, but do they have life? Do their physical realms intersect with this deeper realm we've been talking about? But in thinking about it, if the intersecting place between a line and a plane is often very limited, generally very limited, taking up far less space than either the rest of the line or the rest of the plane, and leaving the rest of the line and the rest of the plane untouched, ... Now here, I wish I had two hands to show you. I've propped this up with my hand holding it, this camera. I'm gonna see if I can put it down on my knee. That's why I held it, because on my knee isn't the best. But this way I can show you. If the intersecting place between a line, call this a line, and a plane, this hand is a plane. But if they intersect, a line and a plane, mind you, it wouldn't split it. maybe I should do it this way. But if the intersecting place where they connect is very small, it's just right this big, right here, this point, and it leaves the rest of the line and the rest of the plane untouched. Then it goes on to say, and if the intersecting place between a plane and a three-dimensional object, say a ball or a chunk, a square, if those two intersect, so this is one-dimensional, this is two-dimensional, and there's a very small connection, and this is two-dimensional, and this is, say, three-dimensional, and if it goes through, it's only the circle that is the connecting point, leaving the rest of the line out there and under, and the rest of the ball or three-dimensional untouched. It's only just this part. If it's a circle, if it's a sphere, then it's only a circle here, right here, that is affected, that is connected, the intersecting place. So if the intersecting place between a plane and a three-dimensional object is often very limited, I say often, is very limited, taking up far less space than either the rest of the plane or the rest of the three-dimensional object, leaving the rest of the plane and the rest of the three-dimensional object untouched, then perhaps the intersecting place between a three-dimensional universe, what we're in, a three-dimensional universe, and a larger or more dimensional heavenly realm might take up far less space than either the one or the other of these, leaving the rest of the three-dimensional universe and the more dimensional heavenly realm untouched. Then I wrote later, because I wrote all this on the computer, typed it out, typing it, but then I wrote on the paper after I printed it off. I wrote in handwriting, just printing. And it just might be a sphere, because the first one was a dot, the second one was a circle, the third one, if all this universe were to intersect with God's four and more dimensional, it just might be a sphere. That could be Earth. Whew, that may be the longest actual sentence I ever wrote. But what if? It makes sense. Here, I'll put this back now. But what if? It makes sense. Even geometrical sense. Ah, well, it gives us more to think about. But it sure leaves you feeling a lot less lost in space and time if you consider that this Earth just might be in a kind of spotlight, and that our insignificant personal dramas and the enormous compounded dramas of civilization and culture that are enacted here just might be as significant to God and to his eternal plan as, well, as he has told us they are. I put, next paragraph, I put 3 exclamation points. Next paragraph, I put amazing. Next paragraph, I put and possible. Next paragraph, I put real, period. Next paragraph. And here I could quit, and maybe I should. But though life regularly displays its marvelous, show-stopping miracles and deep, unfathomable truths, still, life as usual goes on until the next event and beyond. And since we are on this jaunt across the field, I suppose that we might kind of just finding this jaunt across the field, discovering things. I suppose that we might reasonably head home now, discovering lesser things as we go, unless he brings us to another big surprise along the way. He does that too sometimes. So please don't think of me. Please don't think me rude to go on with thinking of other things. It's not like I don't know what happened just now. How that, at least for me, I've unearthed one of the biggest diamonds of thought that I'll ever find. I know it. Then I put in brackets. Come to think of it, I've heard that one of the biggest diamonds ever found was dug out of the wall of a diamond mine by a mere tour guide with a penknife. like like this, and he digs it out of the whoa. And such is the tour we're on with these rose and sword discoveries. End the bracket. I just saw a birdie over there. It's just that life, like the birdie, is actually bigger than diamonds, even big ones. And a good meal or a cool drink of water can be more refreshing after all. Just keep the diamond in your pocket, 'cause it might come in handy sometime, just to show what kind of amazing things and connections God can create, even here when He's a mind to. I keep on going. I think I'll go a little farther. It's 26. How come it says 50 on the other side? I don't know. Let's see. There is a depth in God, and He Himself has urged us to respect life more than gold and diamonds. As Jesus said, quote, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." End quote. Then also this, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. End quote. And mammon is basically understood to be what we might call sword stuff, earthly stuff, of which money is generally thought to be chief. Then there's also this in Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21 and 24 through 33. Ooh, it's a pretty big quote. Quote, "Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit to his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Therefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall not he much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Therefore take no thought, saying, What shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." End quote. Then here goes, but if we weren't deep ourselves, it wouldn't make sense, nor would it even be possible for us to look for depth elsewhere. But we have depth, and we can sense the value of that depth. We can even identify and describe depth and direction and intensity, which is evident in our history and our humor, and even in our ability to recognize opposites, like the lists themselves. And that God would care for us, his creation, so much that he would sacrifice his Son to rescue us from the destructions that we muddlesomely and often sinfully make for ourselves. and the destructions that we make for one another and for society as a whole, this is outstanding. This is incomprehensible. That we caused all sorts of trouble, and yet he loves us and would sacrifice his son to regain us. This creator is obviously somebody bigger and better than you and I. And this is especially clear if you take into account how often and how hard man will work and strive and strain to believe that there is no creator, and that no one is keeping record of our words, and no one will ever call us in, each personally, to account for our actions and for our unwillingness to act in the behalf of life and truth and love. We try so hard to forget him that it's a wonder he doesn't try and succeed in forgetting us. But for one thing, he has said that he will not forget Israel. Quote, "Can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. Behold, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hands." End quote. That is found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, verses 15 and 16. And we are of Israel if we believe in him and become part of that household of faith. See Romans chapter 9, where it explains that. And furthermore, those hands were pierced for all people. But we need to be living in the direction of life in order to walk alongside him, because he will not force us to love him, nor to hear his words and obey them and live. He gives us our choice, and day by day we choose. Life, and then there's an empty space, and then I start over, but I think I'm going to stop at the end of this page. Life and truth and love. All three concepts, at various times, were used as descriptions of Jesus Christ. On one occasion, Jesus described himself as the way, the truth, and the life, going on to say, "No man cometh unto the Father but by me," which makes sense, especially when you read that neat passage in Matthew 25, quoted earlier, "For all nations go to him to be judged." And in this passage, Jesus describes many who did not even recognize why he would approve of them. Yet he called them brothers and told them, "Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." End quote. Because he knew by their deeds that they were actively living in the direction of life. Whereas to the others, even though they called him Lord, but Lord, he said, "Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." End quote. Because by their neglecting to live in the direction of life, their neglecting to help other people who needed help, they had clearly chosen to live their lives in the direction of death, and were quite obviously no brothers of his. And he takes back the talents he has given them as well, as we see from an earlier parable in that same chapter. For the Lord was not talking merely of earthly money that he gives into our care, but he lends us our mental and physical and emotional capacities and abilities as well, for us to use to turn a profit in the direction of life, if we use them properly. Then at judgment, he gives us more to invest on into heaven. But if a man uses them only for his own consumption and earthly gain, then God takes his goods back at that time and gives them to another, so that such a man is merely a man again, and an empty, hardened, inwardly turned man at that, and not a smart or witty or handsome or charming person after all, as it had seemed. A really eye-opening chapter, that, in Matthew chapter 25. We need to get out and love and visit and help and turn a profit in the direction of life. And before anybody up and says that works don't count before God, go check out the difference in the scriptures between works and dead works, for they are spoken of as two different things. So I think I'll leave it at that right now. That's page 39, near to the end. I'll stop it. 35, 35, 30, 35, 35. Let's see. Show you. Oh, it's springtime here, and that's what it's looking like. And there was a little birdie on that ground over there a little while ago. And I'll leave it at that. Okay, talk to you later. Thank you.